January 28th, 2025. Well, I want to discuss something a little different than the normal topics we get into on these videos, because in the last, I guess, week or so, there's been some interesting developments on the whole UAP subject, which I've rarely discussed, but occasionally get to on these videos. I have been following it, and of course, we know about it, about a year and a half ago or thereabouts, a person that was highly cleared named David Grush had filed a whistleblower complaint with the Inspector General of the intelligence community, and eventually testified before the House of Representatives Oversight Committee, in which he claimed that there was a large amount or a significant number of UAP efforts that were being not funded properly from Congress and not properly disclosed, that had been going for many, many years, sometimes referred to as the legacy program or just simply the program. And it involves basically trying to acquire let's call it technology produced, what they call it, non-human intelligence, otherwise known to us as aliens typically, although that term is used largely to not presuppose the origin of these beings. There are some exotic ideas of where they could come from, and although normally we think extraterrestrial and from some other solar system, but I won't get into that issue as to what that is. But at any rate, he'd had some interviews on this new news station called News Nation, and with Ross Coulthart, and also before he testified to the committee. And so not much has come out of it since then because of the security clearances involved. The people who control the SCIFs and the security clearances won't allow him testify an open session, and they won't let him into a SCIF in order to testify in a closed session. So as a result, they're keeping the Congress out of the know. Now, one of the things that he had stated was that when the data would become public, that we would receive what he called an ontological shock in what he discovered. And we were kind of a little bit near what that would be. And of course, now the latest development from Ross Coulthart is an interview with a man named Jake Barber, who was basically a deniable covert operative for the United States government for many years. And there's a little bit of a backstory there on that and how he got involved in this. But the bottom line is that he had been involved in a couple of UAP retrievals and perhaps another retrieval which could have been of that nature or just something else. And then he had another event at the end, which I guess ultimately led to him kind of breaking off of these activities involving the recovery of some laptop type devices made by Panasonic, which apparently had recorded some data that was of sensitive nature. So anyway, so I'll get into this a little bit here and explain what this is. If you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, or you can also find this as in the description below on Rumble. The address is basically the same on both. But so, okay, essentially what the story is that after a somewhat interesting background, apparently he had family members that were very military connected, and he had apparently he's an athletic individual, and I guess the kind of a person that occasionally got into fights, however, and apparently got expelled from school right before his graduation from high school. And he was sent to be selected in some kind of special selection for the military, for the Air Force, I guess. But it's not the normal recruitment you would have. In fact, he might not be exactly what they might have wanted normally, but in his case, apparently the testing revealed certain special skills. And he eventually was selected into a program which officially was a mechanic for the Air Force as far as his official paperwork. But in reality, he was given extensive training in things like how to fly helicopters, uh, combat, tactics, and all sorts of things. And at some point, apparently, he left regular service and got involved into even a more covert role. And so, explain. I don't know if you've seen the video, then I'm just kind of reading this back to you. But if you haven't, I'm trying to give a quick synopsis of what it is, which I think is the next stage in this whole thing. Because here you have somebody who has at least some firsthand experience with it, and he's actually seen these objects himself. Um, Now, okay, so then he had to train as a helicopter pilot in the commercial world, even though he was fully skilled to do it from his Air Force training, his covert training, you might say. And he had to, go through the basics of it and try to pretend like he was learning when he actually knew it all already, and got his license. And then he had a civilian company, which is like a cover, but it was also where he made a fair amount of money too. And apparently the government arranged for him to be quite profitable in this effort. And on occasion, he would be called for a special mission, and he would. But mostly it seemed to be transportation type missions with a helicopter, but it won't say anything like U.S. Air Force or U.S. Army on it. It will just be a deniable helicopter. And presumably, if he were to be caught or killed, as they used to say in Mission Impossible, the government could deny any knowledge of his actions, right? And so essentially, it puts him in an interesting position. Officially, he's not really that highly cleared, but actually, he really cleared for very top secret work. but he gets the clearance as he needs it and goes away as he doesn't need it, or something like that. At any rate, most of his missions were what you might call, some mission maybe in Africa or some foreign country where, again, we didn't want to be associated with it as a United States government operation, but they want to do it. And this has nothing to do with anything like UAPs. It'd be rather conventional type operations, the kind of thing that, you wouldn't think would be, that we wouldn't be involved in, right? And then apparently out of the blue, after a significant amount of doing this, one time he gets called to pick up an object, which is kind of an egg-shaped craft. Apparently the whole atmosphere around it, the way it was organized, and what he saw convinced him this was not a normal recovery. And now there's some controversy on that from our debunking community. I'm aware of that, because there is an aerostat balloon, and of course I would think he would realize just by the way it behaved. But the thing is, he is within like 150 feet of it, and it's down on a cable below the helicopter, and they pick it up and move it from place to place. And then another instance, he was picking up something more of a disc-shaped craft called, they use the term 8-gong. I didn't understand this term initially, but it's a flat, gong-shaped thing, except it's got 8 ridges on it in the top of some type. And he had to transport that one also. And there he encountered some kind of a psychological effect, which apparently had a profound effect on his mind and almost interrupted his ability to do his job, although he was able to focus and carry out the mission. But apparently it was a life-changing experience, emotional experience. He claimed that he felt some great love or affection somehow during this. And then another thing, which again is ambiguous what it was, he was just carrying a box, I guess. And in that, picked this box up, and in this box he apparently was subjected to the whole crew experienced something which we would generally think of as radiological effects. And there's no clear idea what this thing was. I would even argue that this one may have been something like one of the Russian satellites that had a small nuclear reactor in it that maybe it came down. And if that was a hot reactor, maybe that would be enough to, even at these distances, to cause radiological effects. Or it could be something else. We don't know what it was, but he did have serious radiological effects from it, or effects that are similar to that. We don't know if it was that or something else. So anyway, those are his main cases, and So, but two of them clearly he'd seen things he sees as non-conventional, and the second one clearly would be something that wouldn't be anything usual. The debunkers have this balloon that the Army had that is of a similar dimension and shape, and they're arguing that's what it was. However, if it was that, I don't think he would have had this sort of atmosphere of a very sensitive project associated with it. And later on, apparently, as this thing went on, he eventually also came into learning more and more about how these operations were carried out. And here's where your what maybe the ontological shock comes in. The argument was that they have what they call psionics, or that actually call these craft, and that's how they can receive. Because one of the big mysteries from all the things from Schellenberger and from and from Corbell and from Coulthart, all that claiming that we had received, several more than 10 uh, into double digits craft over the years that were, and most or many were largely intact, not actual crashes like your Roswell event or some of these other ones we know about, but it's somehow they just came down and somehow we got them. That's the argument. Now, what apparently is going on is that they have these so-called psionics or psychics, I guess would be another way of putting it, who can somehow summon these craft, and then apparently, at least in some or most cases, I'm not sure, but certainly some cases, it was revealed in this interview, the long form interview, that they used an electromagnetic pulse device to disable it and cause it to come down, and that was how they were able to capture it. And there's a lot of this. This has some serious implications to it. I mean, obviously, if this was accepted as common, I'm sure a lot of people would have some serious questions about what we're doing in secret, who authorized this behavior. Um, Sort of welcome to Earth, huh? But okay. Um, at any rate, this is what he's related, and he has like 4 or 5 witnesses that were also involved in various military special operations that have worked with him or know of him and verified his authenticity. And so, and he has also gone through a DOPSA process to reveal, I guess, the material he's actually revealed in this, although they thought they were kind of, I think, reviewing a novel. I'm not sure they realized it was a real story. And at least that's the way I'm taking it. If you watch the interview, you can have your own opinion. And he has testified, I think, to the Senate Intelligence Committee on this. And this may be one of the people that the Senator and now Secretary of State, Rubio was speaking of. Because remember, he was talking about people who were highly cleared and they were telling some pretty amazing stories. So anyhow, so that's kind of what it is. I can put a link to that interview in the description below if you have time to watch it. It's 2 hours and 47 minutes, so that's your choice. There's also a shorter version that is the whole interview, which was on the News Nation, the original thing, which is, I guess, under that 40, 50 minutes or so. So, but the less detail. The long version is what I'm really relating to here, because there's a lot of more information in it, and that you didn't get in the short version. And I think it's much more relevant to make an evaluation of what you think of it. But at any rate, this is the next shoe that's dropped, apparently. They were promising somebody would come forward, and now he has. And of course, we have the person from the House hearing that the whistleblower that had the document that Nancy Mace entered into the congressional record, and for which there's a controversy about who brought the document, although Corbell claims he did it, and I don't think Schellenberger denies that, although she gave him credit, and that's a big thing there. I'm not going to get into that detail on this one either. But it's away from what I'm really, it doesn't really matter in a way. It is from the whistleblower, not Jake Barber, but another unnamed whistleblower that came out earlier. And that has interesting information in it too. So we're beginning to see a pattern here of too many people that are coming forward and putting themselves at legal jeopardy to talk about this. And I think the weight of the evidence is going very strongly in favor of this, as I've always thought it would be, that this is a real phenomenon. because I mean, I just don't think that many highly qualified people would put themselves at legal risk just to lie, and for what purpose? For a little bit of notoriety or something? I mean, it's, as I understand this, Jake Barber is a very successful person because in his cover that the government let him create or helped him to create, he's actually been a successful businessman and making his cover credible that he's just a private operator that flies helicopters to remote places and stuff. So at any rate, so that's but apparently this last mission to recover these hard drives and these laptops or whatever, uh, basically um, uh, uh, something in that event, which he can't tell all the details, I guess, because it didn't go through DOPSA or whatever, the Defense Department security review that reviews people that have sensitive information, whether they can talk about it or not, and they redact what they can't. That hasn't been approved, but apparently they mentioned in there that this event involves shots being fired. Now we don't know if the shots were fired at him or from him, or they simply went on the site where they found this hard drives and found um, maybe shell casings. I don't know. They come to believe they were set up in a situation where the deniability aspect of their existence might come into play, and they might might end up dead, and that's why they then sort of started coming forward, and they went to the processes to be a whistleblower. So. And currently they're still alive, and maybe I guess they feel by being on TV and being known that will reduce the probability of anything happening. No guarantees there, but okay. So anyway, I just thought that's an interesting development. I think that the fact that this ontological shock thing is the degree to which these objects, these UAPs, can be summoned by psychics, and that they if you want to call them that, or psionics as they call them, and that the objects occupants, I guess, will fall for that. Um, there's a big something that's sort of apparent in what I've just said previously here. That I'm not going to go into that, but you think about what's implied here by bringing these craft down. By the way, he also mentioned that before you use this device, this electromagnetic pulse thing, the psionics have to break contact, or else it might have a severe effect on them, which leads you to wonder, well, what about the occupant of the vehicle? So at any rate, but nonetheless, they didn't get into that at all, and I don't know. I'm not going to say too much about that because I'm just saying there's implications here. Now, so anyway, so I think that's a major breaking development and to me, I'm seeing a lot of pieces that I know about over the years, a lot of things I was aware of, but didn't quite believe, didn't quite accept, but I kind of stored the memory of it like, okay, I know about this. I've heard that claimed. I'm not sure I buy that. I've heard this claimed. I'm not sure I buy that, but I'm aware of it. And all of a sudden, these jigsaw puzzle pieces come together. And another thing that came out of this was the story, which I don't know if I've ever put in a video, of the Michael Herrera, who was a Marine who was assigned to a rescue operation during a hurricane in Indonesia back, I think was it 2009 or 11 or somewhere back about that time period, at any rate, when he was in the Marines. And him and a small team came upon a situation in which there were um, trucks, F-150 pickup trucks, I believe it was, with some kind of casket type things on the back of them, and then an object, sort of like what they describe as the 8 gong, only maybe a bigger one landed or was hovering anyhow, and then they were waylaid by a black ops team, in ninja outfits, armed with typical special ops American type weapons. They clearly were Americans, but their speech, they weren't foreigners, and they were basically disarmed by these people, and then sent back to their encampment, and then later on, he had taken a picture, I guess, before they were waylaid, and this guy's camera was taken, or at least the card that has the data on it. was taken, and he was called into a meeting later with a Air Force colonel who forced him to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which he honored until the Defense Appropriation Act of 2022, I believe it was approved, which waived these NDAs and allowed him to come forward as a whistleblower. So, anyway, but the point is, he had some idea that this involved human trafficking, but what it turned out to be the case is that that's exactly the way these psionics are in these things. And what really, I think, now this is just me, my interpretation, these are sensory deprivation chambers, which allows them to free themselves from outside influences while they focus on their mental activity, let's say. So if and they are, I guess they have adequate ventilation and what in them, so they're well taken care of. And there's that these individuals that do this tend to come from like various maybe unconventional places, well, like Native Americans that are into shamanism, I guess, or something like that, or some foreigners that have similar cultural traits. So anyway, just give you a little bit. This is kind of an idea to me that the government is actually using these people for this purpose and carry out these operations is a whole different thing. We can now see how they could get objects. We could see a lot of other things, which I'm not going to get into here also. And we can also see why Congress, when they actually get this, are probably a little bit tight-lipped at this point. And it's not, do they really want to go there? I mean, to go after the people doing this, then you have to sort of accept the reality of it, right? And a lot of people, maybe even most of my listeners here, aren't exactly cool with what I'm saying, right? I don't know if you are or not. You could comment below. I mean, how many people believe this is real or not? That's a good, interesting question. People may be more and more open to this than they were or not. I don't know. It's sort of not your hardcore science point of view, and your typical debunker, I'm sure, is spun up to full maximum debunk. But at any rate, I just thought I'd run that through you. That I think this is a step forward, and maybe there'll be additional developments as the year goes forward. He's prepared to testify, but here's the point. As I understand it, this going back to Jeremy Corbell and his whole beef, which he has some on Tubi. He's got a 6-episode thing about the UFO revolution or something like that. That he goes through all that too. But he had this whistleblower that also that Schellenberger had, and this person was prepared to testify if they would give him a subpoena that would free him from this NDA signed with, I guess, the Arrow Group. And they apparently failed to do that, maybe because the leadership just didn't want to do it. I think it would take a majority vote of the committee to get that subpoena out, and I don't know, or they just didn't want to go there. Like I said, the more you learn about this, I can kind of see why members of Congress would be hesitant to jump into this. But anyway, I'll leave this for your consideration. Any comments are appreciated, and of course, I'll be posting this on both YouTube and Rumble, of course, as always, and the rest of my social media accounts are in the description below. So it'll be all for now. We'll see what you think of all this.